Have we, as human beings, become so accustomed to suffering that things which should bother our conscience simply do not anymore? And if we have, when did that happen? I am Dr. Mark McMorris Jr. Today, I want to address something that has weighed on my heart for a long time: the value we place on life. We like to call ourselves a compassionate society. I believe most people genuinely want to be. But when I look at what we have learned to accept, I have to ask, do our actions still match our words? Jeremiah 17:9 tells us the heart is deceitful above all things. Put simply, human beings are masters of self-justification. If a situation is inconvenient or demanding, we will quickly find a reason to convince ourselves that our choices are acceptable. Proverbs 31:8 instructs us, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves." The message is clear. When someone has no voice, those of us who do have a responsibility to use it. Keep these two scriptures in mind as we talk today. Every year in this country, countless animals enter shelters through no fault of their own. They were abandoned, neglected, or born because of irresponsible breeding. And because there simply aren't enough homes or resources, healthy animals pay for human failures with their lives. Think about that. The animal did not create the problem. We did. People often ask why these problems persist on such a massive scale. The answer is exposed system-wide neglect. Why is not spay and neuter required and enforced everywhere? Because local governments often treat pet ownership purely as a personal choice rather than a regulated civic responsibility, leaving shelters to handle the overflow. Why aren't pets owners required to hold licenses and health certificates? Because passing and enforcing strict licensing laws takes time and resources. So jurisdictions take the path of least resistance and do nothing until a crisis happens. Why are animal neglect laws so rarely enforced? Because law enforcement agencies are often stretched thin, and far too many still view animal cruelty as a minor infraction rather than a serious breach of public safety and ethics. Why do citizens tolerate this? Because most people assume someone else is handling the problem. Or they turn a blind eye because confronting the reality is too uncomfortable. I know many shelter workers hate this reality as much as I do. They did not create the problem either. They are left holding the pieces of what society refuses to regulate or enforce. So my question isn't just, why are shelters euthanizing animals? My question is, why do we keep creating millions of living beings for whom we have no protection? Why have we accepted this broken system as normal? And there is another issue that touches on this same fundamental question: abortion. I realize people tuning in hold different beliefs on this topic. And I know there can be complex, heartbreaking circumstances surrounding a pregnancy. I am not here to condemn anyone, But if we're going to talk about protecting the voiceless, we cannot ignore unborn life simply because the topic makes us uncomfortable. An unborn child cannot stand up and ask to live. And that brings us right back to Proverbs. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Now, abortion and animal euthanasia are not the same thing, but both force us to ask the same underlying question. How do human beings become comfortable with ending vulnerable life? Jeremiah gives us the answer. The heart is deceitful above all things. We justify, we rationalize, we tell ourselves that a hard choice was necessary. And if something happens frequently enough, we stop questioning it altogether. But something being common does not make it right. Something being legal does not make it right. And something being convenient certainly doesn't make it right. History is filled with practices that people once accepted as normal, things we look back on today with disbelief. So what are we accepting right now that future generations will look back on and ask, how could they have allowed that? Before we point fingers, that question belongs to each of us individually. What suffering have I chosen to ignore? Where have I stayed silent because it was easier? Have I chosen convenience over responsibility? Have I grown comfortable with something simply because everyone around me is? These aren't political questions. They aren't questions for someone else's church. They are questions for you and me. I do not believe humanity is fundamentally evil. I've seen far too much goodness to believe that. I've seen people sacrifice for complete strangers, rescue animals nobody else wanted, and give generously just because a living soul needed help. We are capable of extraordinary compassion, but we are also capable of terrible blind spots when we convince ourselves that our choices are justified. That is why we need a conscience. That is why we need scripture. And that is why occasionally we need to ask questions we would rather avoid. So I want to leave you with this question. What have we learned to accept that should never have become acceptable? Do not answer it for someone else. Ask it for yourself. Ask it of yourself. I am asking it of myself as well. The true test of our compassion isn't how we treat life when protecting it is easy. It's what we are willing to do when protecting that life cost us something. If your conscience tells you something is not right, stop accepting it just because everyone else does. This is Dr. Mark. Good day, and God bless.